There is no denying the golden opportunity that CPEC presents. This mega project is expected to take the bilateral relationship between China and Pakistan to new heights, with aims of transforming the economy and overcoming Pakistan's shortfalls. We'll be talking more about this with Mr. Shakeel Ramay, who's Head of Center for Future Policy and Head of Research Coordination Unit at the Sustainable Development Policy Institute. So my first question to you is, what are some of the sustainable development goals that CPEC would be helping us achieve?
So there are a number of things which we can talk about in sustainable development in the context of the CPEC. For example, so what talk about say sustainable development goals? No one left behind. So that is the first thing we have to keep in mind. So the CPEC is a very transformative project. It includes energy, it includes infrastructure, it includes industry. So that's mean three basic pillars of economies which are essential to run an economy and for sustainable developments. They are here in the CPEC. And especially when we talk about this SEZs, special economic zones, the industry will be producing a lot of jobs, a number of jobs will be producing. That is one aspect of SEZs. The fundamental thing is the backward linkages of special economic zones with the local market, with the cottage industry, with the social entrepreneurship and the small industries. So that will be a game changer in this context, because when we're talking about the sustainable development, no one left behind. So these would be the avenues from where people will be providing the raw material, the semi-meat, the semi-products to the industry which will be operating in those areas. So it has a direct relevance towards sustainable development goals.
Could you shed some light on what early harvest projects are and how will they help our economic situation?
The most of the early harvest projects, they were related to the energy and the infrastructure. Energy was very critical as when we look back to 2013. So there was a very chronic energy shortage in this country. There was a heavy load shedding. There was a load shedding of lengthy load shedding of like that for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours or more. So when that would be the load shedding, it will be a direct relevance towards your economic development, especially in the industrial development, because the industry required the electricity to produce something. If industry is a stop, that means there is no job. When there is no job, that means unemployment is increasing. So it was very crucial for us to have energy, sustainable energy, specifically the sustainable source of energy. So energy, there was the early harvest projects, and we have completed although many early harvest projects in the energy sector, around about 10,000 megawatt. But fundamentally, they made one mistake of our outgoing government. They made one mistake. They did not invest on the governance reform in energy. For example, at this point of time, Pakistan is facing the huge line losses. Around about the Sakhar is at the top with 37%, and other cities are also facing the line losses. DEPCO has predicted, and they have showed the facts in our finance committee like that every year Pakistan have to bear a cost of $213 billion per piece due to the line losses. If you multiply 213 billion rupees with the 4 years, that means it corresponds toward the circular debt. So early harvested project we had in the energy sector, but we could not benefit in the term of the governance in related sectors. And second, there was the infrastructure projects. For example, Gwadar Port is here, so the M1, and there are a number of motorways, highways, and a road are being constructed. The Orange train is here. So these were some of the early harvest projects.
Okay. Now, you've said in one of your articles that CPEC is a revolutionary project, but Pakistan needs to reform more. Pakistan needs reform more than revolution. What kinds of reforms do you expect will ensure smooth functioning of CPEC?
So I did not argue about the revolution. I argue about reforms, because revolution for me is not a sustainable. It's a one-time activity. Until unless you have reformed your institutions, you cannot sustain any change. So that was my basic argument in that article.
And reformation comes.
So I just try to focus on that. What types of the reforms? First, governance reforms. If you go back to the Chinese model, in 1980s they have the 12 million people who are working in the bureaucracy. When they started the reforms, they had only the 4 million people. So at that time. So later on the composition can maybe have changed. One thing. And second thing, the people who are handling this business, they need to be well equipped of the modern techniques of doing the business. For example, the bureaucrat who is doing with the trade, he must understand how the trade can be facilitated, how it can be marketed well, how you can create the integration, how you can use the modern technology to achieve your objectives. One type of a reform. Second thing, we need to identify the right person for the right
job.
Yes. One thing. At the time we are facing right now, we have the bureaucracy. So bureaucracy who are not master of anything, who are not expert of anything, they are just administrative tools. But they are running your most, you can say the technical and most, you can say the modernized institutions like trade. Trade is a too much technical subject, you have to need to understand it. If you have to talk about to implement the law and order, you need to be an expert on the law and order. So these are a number of things you have to do. Reforms.
Yes.
So the reforms, we also need reforms in our skill development. Because at the time we are producing young men which are not very well equipped with the requirement of the modern time. And especially in talking about the CPEC, when you will have the special economic zones, you need the special type of the person, the special type of the skills for there to be employed. For example, you cannot say like the doctor can be employed as an engineer. For engineer job, you need an engineer. So we need to also reform our education sector and the skill development sector, which unfortunately we are not doing at this point of time. But the repercussions of this would be very severe. Why I am saying like that? Definitely industry look for the suitable people. They are not the government entity, they can accommodate anybody. They will need an engineer, they will hire an engineer. So when they don't have these required skills in the market, definitely they have to import it. They will bring the people from their own country. Then the people will start to talking about the East Indian company like this stuff.
Then it's a detriment to your own local industry because you have to import the labor and stuff.
Labor and the
exactly.
stuff. The problem is government is not reforming, and the political parties, I'm not only blaming the government but also political parties. If you look at that, what had been happened in the Sindh? Nothing. What had been happened in the KPK?
Why aren't they reforming
in KPK or Punjab and Balochistan, nothing has been happened. Because they are more concerned about the politics. They are concerned about, like, everybody knows that CPEC is a big initiative. It will have the more jobs, it will have more opportunities for economic and development. So everybody want to get the maximum share. But nobody is focusing on how they can get the maximum benefit share. Maximum benefit share will come for the people through the skill development reforms.
When we develop our local industry.
And not on local industry, the skills. Because we need people. If people have to earn, they need the skills. For example, you are sitting here, you have some skills, you are sitting here. If you don't have that skill, you will not be employed here. So this is a thing I'm talking about in the context of industry and the CPEC. Those people will only be employed who have the required skill to justify their presence there. So, but unfortunately, government is not putting efforts on there. One thing, and second thing, there is also need reforms in the cultural integration, and for the Chinese worker coming here and the Pakistani to interact with each other, they need to understand culture of each other.
There needs to be a mitigation of the barrier and the language barrier.
And also understand the festivals. How somebody is celebrating the festival, their work habits. Because work habits, what we having here in Pakistan is entirely different from the work habits what are in China. So one thing, these reforms we need to identify. One thing, and second thing, we also refine the decision making. Because especially in the context of the special economic zones, we need efficiency based decisions, not the politics-based decisions. For example, everybody wants a special economic zone in its province or in area, but they are not making it a very scientific and economically viable decision. Because when you have to create any special economic zones, you have to look into the geography and the mineral resources and other resources and the skills of those areas.
And the feasibility of making an economic zone.
For example, if you build a special economic zones on a marble, for example, in Bahawalpur, where they are only producing the cotton, so it will not have any meaning. And the same way, if you are going to build a textile city in Gilgit-Baltistan, it will not have no value. So you have to make the efficiency-based decision, not the decision based on the politics.
Now, the Vision 2025 identifies that Pakistan loses about 4 to 6% of its GDP due to energy losses. Now, keeping that in mind, the Quaid-e-Azam solar power initiative that's been taken in Bahawalpur, it's now a target of probes as well as privatization. Now, how is it that we can expect progress when we have issues like this halting these initiatives?
No, and it's not halting. It's about the better governance. What I'm talking about again and again. For example, they said the 1,000 megawatt will be produced there, but at this point of time, there are maybe they have installed only the 300 megawatt. One thing, second thing, the overselling of the product. Nobody talked about what is the capacity factor of the Quaid-e-Azam solar park, because of solar they have the capacity factor. Maximum they can go to 35% or something like that. That's mean if you install 100 megawatt there, it can maximum produce a 35. You cannot say like the 100 megawatt will be produced. You will say the capacity factor is 35, so 35 will be the maximum. But it will be below that. So the thing is that they are overselling. They are not talking in the consistency of what is the reality. They need to talk about the reality. One thing, and second thing, what they sold. So that's means like that's it will produce in there like that. We did this in a very short span of the time. But they could not achieve the required efficiency because it's solar panel are not only about just the sun is available. It's all about what is the heat content of that sun. So if there would be above than the certain level of that heat content, they will be producing negatively because they cannot work on that because technology available here is like that. So then we also have to identify what is the heat content and what types of the solar panels we are installing there. After crossing some limit of the heat, they cannot produce electricity.
Okay. Now, how does the government ensure that Balochistan gets a chunk of this investment and then builds up the physical and the social infrastructure that's been lacking for a very long time?
So so government have to plan better the operationalization of Gwadar because of Gwadar will create a lot of the backward linkages. People will be there, and they will be creating a lot of jobs there. But the other important thing is government have to invest on building other infrastructure, for example, dams there. Because there are a number of areas in Balochistan where you can create a revolution in agriculture sector by just providing water, like Nasirabad or some other areas. You can produce a lot of agriculture products. It will create the thing. Second thing, there is also need, if you really want to make Balochistan a developed area, you have to invest there in skill development and education because at this point of time they are far behind than the other provinces. And the third thing is make this initiative people oriented, not only the elite oriented. What we made the mistake in the past. Most of the times our governments are just negotiated with the elite circle but not with the people. So we have to make it quite widespread all across the Balochistan.
Okay. Now Pakistan has a negative trade balance and is drowning in debt. Don't you think that CPEC is raining heavy on our present economic condition?
So definitely the negative impact is here. So but the other thing we have to look into, what is our exports. Either in the negative exports are they are promoting our export or just as creating the burden. It is just creating a burden because we are not exporting much. For example, if you look at the trade balance of other developed countries of US or China, they import a lot of things. But the problem is they are also exporting a lot of things. They are creating a lot of things, others. So the fundamental thing is as a Pakistani trade negative deficit is dangerous because we are not producing much. We are not creating much economic opportunities. What is our economic opportunity CPEC? We are not creating the atmosphere in which CPEC can deliver the best. We are best in delivering the talks, our government jobs. They feel like that their job is to deliver the talk. Their job is not to deliver the talks. Their job is to create the policy framework, to implement the policy framework,
to provide
the opportunity to the people. But unfortunately, we are not.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. CPEC truly is a golden opportunity for Pakistan's economic growth. But the salvation of our economy lies in the fact that we are honest and dedicated to our national interests and growth. We really hope that the partnership between Pakistan and China bears fruit and leads to a prosperous future. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all again next week.